The F-22 Raptor cut through the morning sky like a blade, engines howling low above Langley Air Force Base. The noise was deafening. People on the ground shielded their ears and looked up. In that moment, everything stopped. Conversations, thoughts, even judgments. All eyes turned skyward. Inside the cockpit, her hands gripped the controls with calm precision. No nerves, no panic, just focus. From this altitude, the crowd below looked like ants. She didn't see individuals. She saw a wall of people who had laughed at her, doubted her, humiliated her just 3 days ago. Today, they were about to learn who she really was, and none of them would ever forget it. 3 days earlier, the silence in Hangar 7 was sharp. Not just quiet silent, like the world itself held its breath. She stood in front of 300 military personnel, facing Colonel Whitman, whose voice had just echoed like a slap across steel walls. "Take off that uniform." "Right now," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. No one moved. No one spoke. Some pretended to look away. Others stared like it was a show. Someone near the back pulled out a phone and began recording. The colonel smirked, arms crossed, like he'd just said something brave. Like he expected applause. She didn't flinch. Not yet. But her heart was pounding, not from fear, but from something deeper. Something tighter. Rage, maybe. Or sorrow, or both. Her name was Mara. Captain Mara Johnson. 28. Fighter pilot. Decorated, tested, trusted. But none of that mattered now, not in this room. To them. She wasn't a soldier. She was a mistake. I said, "Take it off." "That's not a costume party uniform. It's for real pilots." The insult hung in the air. She looked around. These were people she trained with, ate with, saluted every morning. But right now, none of them spoke up for her. Some looked embarrassed. Others amused. Her medal shimmered under the hangar lights. Each one meant something. Missions no one would ever talk about. Risks that came with no parades or welcome homes. And now they were laughing at her because she was a woman. Because she was black. Because she didn't fit their image of a hero. She took one slow breath. Then her hands reached for her insignia. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just started removing the symbols of everything she had earned one by one. The Bronze Star. The pilot wings. The elite badge only 200 people in the world ever received. Each one fell to the concrete floor with a small clink that echoed like a gunshot. You could feel the weight of it all, not just the medals, but the shame they tried to force on her. Someone snickered. Bradford Sinclair, the senator's son, was recording with his phone, grinning. "Finally," he muttered. Somebody said what we're all thinking. Diversity hire in a jet, what a joke. She heard him. Loud and clear, but she didn't react. Not yet. Because this wasn't about a reaction. This was about remembering every word. Every smirk. Every fake laugh and real insult. Because she wasn't just being humiliated. She was documenting a crime. When she removed the final medal. A small unmarked silver badge she'd received from General Morrison himself after a mission that had no official name. She held it a moment longer. Then placed it down gently. She stood tall, her uniform stripped bare, her voice calm. "Thank you, Colonel," she said quietly. "You've reminded me exactly who I am." And then, without another word, she turned and walked out. Her boots echoed like thunder on the hangar floor. Nobody stopped her. Nobody tried. As the doors closed behind her, her phone buzzed in her pocket. A single message. No name. No number. Package delivered. Authorization confirmed. 72 hours. And with that, the countdown began. Because what none of them knew was that the woman they just mocked wasn't just another hopeful pilot. She was a legend, one the Pentagon kept off the books. And in exactly 3 days, the same people who laughed at her would watch her fly higher than any of them ever would. Not for revenge, but for truth, and for everyone who was ever told they didn't belong. 3 days before that fighter jet tore across the sky, Mara Johnson sat alone in her one-bedroom apartment just off base, staring at her reflection in the dark window. Outside, the world went on like nothing had happened. Inside, it was like every moment of her military life had been stripped bare. The silence in that room was louder than any crowd. The video of her humiliation had already gone viral shared. Across group chats, whispered about in officers' lounges, or played in slow motion on screens she'd never see. A joke, they called it. A wake-up call, others claimed. Proof, Bradford Sinclair had typed under the clip, that political correctness is killing the military. The comments stung not because they were true, they weren't, but because she had expected better. Not fame, not even respect. Just fairness, but Mara hadn't been chasing fairness for a long time. Now, she had been chasing truth, when she had first been transferred to Langley Base. It was under a carefully polished lie. Integration program, they called it. Fresh. Talent from civilian backgrounds. What it really meant was this: she was chosen to look good in a photo. A young black woman in uniform made for excellent press, especially during times of recruitment shortfalls. She knew this. She accepted it. Because getting her foot in the door was only the beginning. What they didn't know was that the door. The open led straight to hell. From day one it started. Here comes the poster child. Someone had whispered behind her back, quote a pilot. Someone else mumbled at her locker. During one mission prep, her oxygen system accidentally malfunctioned twice. Her gear was swapped out without explanation. Requests for extra flight hours were denied. Her evaluations were delayed, questioned, rewritten. One of her instructors gave her the nickname Miss PR, which caught on far too quickly. But Mara said nothing. She watched. She listened. She recorded every passive-aggressive comment, every smug laugh when she walked into a room, every eye roll, every whispered joke when she spoke up in briefings. And it wasn't just her. Over time, she noticed the patterns: subtle, deliberate, ugly. Hispanic pilots given less flight time. Asian engineers passed over for command tracks. Women told they were too emotional to lead squadrons. One black crew chief was quietly reassigned after filing a complaint that disrupted unit cohesion. Mara saw it all. And she documented every single piece of it. She knew her silence wouldn't last forever. She just needed the right moment to break it. Not in anger. Not in an outburst. But with undeniable proof and a platform so loud. It couldn't be muted. That moment came in Hangar 7. The final push came not from the colonel's order, but from the cowardice of the crowd. The way they watched her suffer, some filming like. She was part of a show, some smiling. Most saying nothing. They weren't just bystanders. They were witnesses, and that's what she needed. That night, she opened a secure folder on her encrypted drive through years of data. Voice recordings, screenshots, reports, maintenance logs, altered flight schedules, all tagged, sorted, cross-verified. It wasn't just a list of complaints. It was a timeline, a pattern, a case. She printed it all, packed it into a hard file, and drove. 2 hours later, she slid into the back booth of a highway Denny's, where a gray-haired man in civilian clothes waited, sipping coffee. General Robert Morrison retired, technically. But no one in Mara's world ever really retired. Mara, he said, looking up with tired but focused eyes. I saw the footage. She didn't flinch. She pulled out the folder and placed it. Between them, his hand rested on it for a moment, heavy with unspoken weight. That's everything, she said quietly. He opened the file, his lips pressed into a line as he read page after page. At one point, he paused, running his fingers through his thinning hair. Jesus, he muttered. How long have you had all this? Long enough, she said. I wanted to see how far they'd go. He looked at her for a long moment, the way a commander looks at a soldier who just admitted to fighting a war nobody else knew was happening. What do you want? He finally asked. She didn't hesitate. Authorization for a demonstration, one they can't laugh off. I want every single one of them to see what real excellence looks like. He closed the folder slowly. You know, this means exposure. Everything. Your missions. Your real file. You'll never go back to being anonymous. Mara met his eyes. I've spent 2 years pretending to be average, and they still couldn't handle it. It's time they met the real me. And with that, the plan was set in motion. The countdown wasn't just for a flight. It was for the storm about to hit Langley. And this time, Mara wouldn't be the one trembling. They would. The next morning, Langley Base buzzed with whispers. Not about strategy briefings or mission updates, but about her. About the video. People passed it around like gossip candy, each new view adding a fresh layer of disrespect. Some rewatched it, just to laugh again. Others shared it quietly, afraid of being seen, yet unable to look away. A few kept their heads down, regret flickering behind their silence, but no one said anything to Mara. She wasn't their and that's what worried them most, because when someone disappears after being publicly humiliated and they don't cry, don't complain, don't post about it, they're not broken. They're planning. While Sinclair posted memes and edited fake audio clips of Mara's voice, she was miles away, standing inside a hangar that didn't officially exist. The walls were steel. The security tighter than any Air Force facility she'd ever worked in. No nameplates, no welcome signs, just silence and engines. You're really doing this? Captain Tony Rodriguez asked, walking up beside her with a checklist in hand. Mara didn't answer right away. She was standing in front of it. The plane. It didn't look like the ones in the brochures. This F-22 had been stripped of every visible marking. Its paint was matte black with minor burns near the tail. The shape had been slightly modified experimental tech that few even knew existed. This wasn't for air shows. This is the kind of jet flown by people who didn't appear on rosters. Missions never spoken of, failures never admitted, successes never celebrated, only filed away in dark rooms beneath Washington. And it belonged to her. She ran her hand across the cool surface of the nose. 100 memories rushed through her. Like blood, dodging missiles at Mach 1, flying blackout recon runs under radar nets, sitting in briefing rooms where every word was followed by, "This never happened." Tony watched her in silence. "I'm sure," she finally said. "You understand." He reminded her, once that jet lifts off and the live stream starts, there's no going back. Every person you trained with, every mission you flew. "It'll all be out there. I'm not hiding anymore," she replied. "And I'm not just doing this for me." She meant that. Deep down, she wasn't thinking about Sinclair or Whitman or the dozens who'd mocked her behind her back. She was thinking about the others who never even got a chance to be mocked. The ones pushed out quietly. The ones whose names never made it on the door. The ones like her brother. He had been older, braver, always 2 steps ahead of her as a kid. He joined a special unit straight out of college, and within 3 years disappeared. Training accident, they said. No. Body found. No details. Just a folded flag, an empty casket, and silence. But 2 years later, she found his name again in a classified list only 6 people had access to. His mission had been real. But so had the betrayal. That's when she made a promise. She would. Never let them bury someone's truth like that again. "Final prep starts now," Tony said, snapping her back to the moment. "We launch on Monday, 0800, you'll get 1 window. 10 minutes over Langley. Then you vanish again." Mara nodded. That night, she sat in her apartment, quietly eating dinner alone. Outside, the streetlights flickered. A black sedan with government plates sat parked on the block. No one came out. No one went in. But she knew why it was there. Not for protection. For containment. She was now an asset with a countdown clock. Her mother called again, her voice tight and worried. "Baby, why haven't you come home yet? You don't have to prove anything. Let this pass." But Mara couldn't. Tell her that she wasn't proving anything. She was ending it, ending the cycle of quiet promotions, handed to loud men with average skills. Ending the endless need to smile while being underestimated. ending the fear of standing up because you might lose your chance to sit at the table. Because she wasn't asking for a seat anymore. She was about to fly over the entire table and show the world she built the damn runway dot on Sunday morning. A message arrived. Authorization confirmed. System checks complete. Mission is green. Back on base, Whitman laughed as he showed the video to another group of officers, repeating the same line he always did. This is what happens when we hire for optics instead of skill. And Bradford Sinclair? He posted a TikTok imitating her again, this time wearing a paper pilot hat, doing a bad impression of her voice. "Sir, I demand respect." He shouted in the video. Laughter followed, but none of them noticed that the hashtags they used, the comments they wrote, the memes they shared, were being quietly pulled, sorted, and forwarded to a legal team operating out of the Pentagon. Mara had once been a fighter. Pilot. Now she was something else, a weapon forged in silence, and her moment was just hours away. The sun rose slowly over Langley Air Force Base, casting golden light across the runway, the hangars, and the rows of uniformed personnel standing stiffly in formation. It was Monday, 7:59 hours. The order had come down late Friday. Mandatory demonstration. Advanced flight technology. Full attendance. Hangar 7. Full dress uniform. No exceptions. No one knew what it meant. Not even Colonel Whitman, and that alone irritated him. He hated being left out of the loop. It made him feel powerless. He stood near the front of the crowd now, lips tight, arms folded, trying not to show just how annoyed he was. Beside him, Bradford Sinclair held his phone at his chest, already recording. "Watch," he whispered to the officer next to him. "They're probably bringing out some girl pilot to lecture us on inclusion again." The officer didn't respond. He wasn't smiling either. The air was tense thick with confusion, maybe curiosity, but mostly boredom. Another training lecture, most thought. Another public relations stunt with flashy drone talk and carefully worded speeches. Then everything changed. The roar came first. It wasn't like the usual F-22 engine sound. This was sharper, deeper, faster, like thunder racked and steel. Heads turned. Sinclair's phone shot up like a reflex. Even Whitman looked toward the open hangar doors. What they saw next left mouths open and words forgotten. The aircraft screamed into view. Low over the tarmac, banking hard, its body gleaming like a shadow cut from the sky. Its maneuvers were impossible tight rolls, sharp turns, hovering midair for seconds before vanishing into the clouds like a ghost. Then it came back. Even lower. Slower. This time. It made no sound until it touched the ground. It coasted on its wheels with such grace that some officers forgot to breathe. A few of the senior pilots blinked twice. One captain near the rear whispered, "I've never seen anyone fly like that. Ever." The jet stopped perfectly before the hangar doors. The engines hissed into silence. And then the cockpit opened, a helmet lifted, black hair spilled out, catching the morning light. Someone gasped. Whitman's face went completely still. Sinclair lowered. His phone confused. She stepped out slowly, every movement controlled. Her flight suit clean, precise, silent. She walked toward the podium set up near the front, past rows of stunned men and women who couldn't decide whether they were watching a dream or a reckoning. General Robert Morrison stood beside the microphone, his voice steady as always. "Good morning," he said. "Today you've witnessed a demonstration of elite aviation skill so far beyond standard combat. Readiness that only 3 individuals on record have ever completed such a flight. The pilot who just landed this aircraft is one of them." Mara Johnson took her place beside him. Some jaws dropped. Others clenched. Many just stared. Sinclair's voice cracked out of nowhere. "No, that's not... She's not a real... She is." Morrison cut in, not even looking at him. "Let me be clear. You are now standing in the presence of Lieutenant Colonel Mara Ghost Johnson. Yes, the ghost pilot you've heard about in training scenarios. The one referenced in War College reports. The one who's flown Black Ops. Missions under presidential command. The same Mara Johnson many of you humiliated last week. A frozen silence fell across the room like Winter. Mara stepped forward. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was calm, too calm. 3 days ago, I was ordered to remove my uniform, she said. Not because of my actions. Not because of my failures, but because of your assumptions. She tapped a tablet behind her. A massive screen lowered from the hangar ceiling. Images began to flash. Sinclair's TikTok videos. Whitman laughing on camera. Talking about diversity hires. Text messages, comments, emails. Flight logs showing denied flight hours. Maintenance reports marked tampered. Gasps filled the room. You didn't just disrespect me, she said. You created a culture that punished difference, protected mediocrity, and pushed out excellence because it came in a package you didn't recognize. Sinclair stammered. I didn't mean any. You did, she said without looking at him. And so did every person who laughed, filmed, or stayed silent. Whitman, face pale, tried to speak. Morrison raised a hand. Colonel Whitman, effective immediately, you are relieved of duty. Pending full investigation for misconduct, discrimination, falsification of records, and endangering flight personnel. Sinclair stepped back, panic setting in. And Mr. Sinclair, Morrison added, your access to all military installations is revoked. Your actions are under review by federal authorities. You are no longer welcome here. Security personnel moved forward, quietly but firmly. One stood beside Sinclair. Another behind Whitman. You tried to humiliate me, Mara said, voice steady. But humiliation only works if the target believes they deserve it. I didn't. She paused, then looked at the crowd. To those of you who stayed quiet, your silence was noted. To those who still think, excellence looks one way. Remember this day. Because the sky doesn't care what color your skin is. It only responds to skill. She stepped back. The crowd didn't clap. Not yet. They were still in shock, still processing that the woman they dismissed had just flown circles around everything they believed. But in that silence, something had shifted. Respect, once denied, had entered the room, and it wasn't going anywhere. That night, Langley Base didn't sleep. Words spread like a wildfire, with no Winslow, hot and inescapable. The demonstration, the reveal, the silence that followed. Some still couldn't believe it. Others refused to. But none of them could unsee it. Lieutenant Colonel Mara, Ghost, Johnson had flown the most advanced jet the military had ever built on. Live feed and full view of every person who ever doubted her. She hadn't just performed. She had rewritten what excellence looked like, but Mara didn't care about the talk anymore. She wasn't reading the group chats. She wasn't checking the reposts of the footage. She wasn't counting views or comments. She already knew the truth, and now so did everyone else. That night, she drove the same old Honda Civic she always had. Nothing had changed about it except the weight it carried now. The silence inside it was different. Not the silence of pain, but of something finally settling after years of being shaken. On the passenger seat was the folder, the original one. Her real military ID, the true ranks. The mission approvals with signatures that most people only saw in museums. Stamps for operations buried deep within shadowy corners of the world. This wasn't some prop. It was the truth. The one she'd hidden while letting the world call her a fraud. At a red light, her phone buzzed. One new message. President has authorized full legal review. Begin transition. Command transfer pending. Confirm readiness. Mara blinked at the screen. Her fingers hovered for a moment. Then she replied, ready. Meanwhile, back at Langley, Colonel Whitman sat alone in the officer's lounge. The lights were still on, but no one else was there. Not tonight. No one wanted to be seen near him now. His name was trending, but for all the wrong reasons. The official military announcement had gone public. Colonel dismissed pending investigation into misconduct and systemic discrimination. But that wasn't what broke him. What broke him was the video from that morning. Her flight, her speech, her calm and the cheers that had finally come when she left the hangar. They hadn't been loud, but they'd been real. He sat slumped in his chair, his uniform suddenly too big for him, as if it didn't fit anymore because maybe deep down, it never had. Sinclair had it worse. He had gone live later that afternoon to apologize, but the comments didn't care. Too late. Now you're sorry? Privileged punk trying. To save his reputation, his own followers had turned on him by midnight. He had lost sponsorship deals. Aviation pages unfollowed him. Even his father's press secretary had gone silent. No one wanted to be tied to a viral disgrace, and Mara? She wasn't watching any of it. She was sitting across from General Morrison again, this time in a quiet office beneath a classified building, far from any base. The desk between them was empty except for a single sealed envelope. "This is yours," Morrison said. She opened it. Inside was a single document, an offer. Not for another rank, not for medals, not even a promotion, but something greater. Commander, Military Aviation Excellence Academy. Mara read it once, then again. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She just nodded like someone accepting what they already earned. "Your mission," Morrison said, "will be to lead a new generation. Train them, teach them, build a system where no one ever has to do what you did just to be seen." She folded the letter quietly. "Where will it be?" she asked. His lips twitched into a small, almost proud smile. "Hangar 7, Langley." The irony didn't need to be spoken. The same space where she'd been stripped of her uniform would now carry her name. 2 days later, construction began. The media wasn't allowed in. No public ribbon cutting, no press releases, but within weeks, whispers started again. Not the kind that mocked, the kind that respected, because something new was forming inside those walls. Place where cadets of every background were trained by the best judge, not by skin or gender or who their parents were, but by one thing only: skill. The message was clear. Excellence wasn't something you inherited. It was something you earned and proved again and again. And if you were good enough to fly at that level, it didn't matter what you looked like. The sky would make room. And under Mara's command, it finally was. 6 months later, the hangar that once echoed with laughter at her expense now buzzed with something entirely different: hope. Bright-eyed cadets moved in formation across the floor, some still learning to salute correctly, others already deep into flight simulations. Their uniforms were clean, crisp, but what made this place different wasn't how they looked, it was what they felt. For the first time, many of them walked through a military institution and didn't feel like guests. They felt like they belonged. The golden plaque outside read, "Lieutenant Colonel Mara Ghost Johnson Training Center." Underneath in smaller letters, "Excellence doesn't ask for permission." Inside, Mara stood behind the thick glass of the observation deck, arms crossed as she watched the first live drill of the week. Her gaze was sharp but calm, like a storm held behind her eyes. She didn't bark orders. She didn't pace the room. She didn't have to. They listened because they knew she had already done what they were dreaming of. She had flown where few had even imagined going. Captain Jennifer Martinez, one of the new instructors and one of the first to graduate under Mara's command, walked in holding a tablet. "Commander Johnson," she said with a grin. "First semester results are in." Mara turned slowly. "Well, we've broken every record," Jennifer replied. "Highest pass rate in Air Force history. And half the graduates are women. And minorities." For a second, Mara didn't respond. She just nodded. Her eyes drifted back to the runway, where 2 young cadets, a South Asian girl and a white boy with a prosthetic arm, were high-fiving after a perfect landing. They said it couldn't be done. Mara murmured. Jennifer tilted her head. "Who?" Mara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Everyone who thinks excellence only fits one mold." Jennifer paused. "You know, I never told you this, but I almost didn't join. I thought I'd get laughed out of the cockpit." You would have, Mara said, her voice calm. A year ago, Jennifer raised an eyebrow, but now? Mara continued. Now they'd have to race you just to keep up. Outside, cadets lined up again for the next round. The sound of aircraft engines hummed from the runways. Across the country, military bases were watching. The program at Langley had become a model. Delegations from over 20 countries had visited. Mara's training manual, Leadership Beyond. Bias was being read in Air Force. Academies on every continent. She had become something far more powerful than just a decorated pilot. She'd become a system-changer. But her rise hadn't just lifted others. It had also exposed everything that had been hidden for years. Colonel Whitman had been officially discharged. His pension revoked. His benefits stripped. The investigation revealed a decade of quiet corruption, fabricated performance reviews. Backdoor deals, medical discharges used as tools to push out unwanted profiles. Last anyone heard, he was working night security at a shopping mall, his uniform traded for a polyester vest, his eyes hollow, his voice quiet. His arrogance had vanished. Bradford Sinclair, on the other hand, had tried to rebrand himself online. When that failed, he attempted to join the military again, this time as an enlisted soldier, but the recruiter had recognized his name immediately. You're that guy from the videos, the recruiter said, tapping his file. Sinclair nodded almost. Proud. The recruiter shook his head. We don't take your kind here. Character matters. Sinclair's final appeal was denied. No one took his calls anymore. His old friends had unfollowed him. His family's wealth had shrunk thanks to lawsuits and bad publicity. Even the name Bradford Sinclair had become a punchline among cadets. His digital legacy had become a warning, not a memory. And Mara stood in that hangar every morning like clockwork. Not for appearances, not for press, but because this was her mission now. Her true mission, not fighting overseas, not operating in secret, but building something greater than herself, changing the rules, so no one else would ever have to fight just to be seen. One afternoon, Tony Rodriguez, now Colonel Rodriguez and Deputy Director of the Academy, walked in, holding a thick envelope. It's official, he said. Mara raised an eyebrow. What is? The president wants you to lead the first military space mission, all civilian, all diverse, fully trained through our program. She took the envelope, but didn't open it right away. History again? She asked quietly. He laughed. You keep making it. Might as well own it. But Mara was thinking about something else. Back when she was just a mechanic pretending to be invisible, she used to dream of moments like this. But in those dreams, she was always flying solo, alone in the sky. Now when she looked outside, she didn't see herself alone anymore. She saw hundreds of cadets walking the same path she had paved with fire. And in that moment, she understood. The highest you'll ever fly isn't when you soar above others. It's when you lift others with you. The sun was setting behind the hangar now, its light falling across the metal walls that once echoed with laughter, shame, and arrogance. But those echoes were gone, replaced by something stronger. Respect. Inside the Academy's central hallway, two photographs hung side by side. The first was a now famous image. Mara standing with her uniform half removed, medals scattered on the floor, while hundreds watched in silence. It was raw, painful, and unforgettable. The second photo had been taken exactly 6 months later. Same hangar, same angle. But this time it showed rows of cadets of all races, genders, and backgrounds standing tall, saluting their commander. And at the center of it all, Mara, arms behind her back, eyes forward. The crowd wasn't mocking her now. They were following her. Mara stood quietly in front of those photos, alone. Her fingertips rested gently against the frame of the first picture. For a moment, she closed her eyes. She remembered that day. The heat in her chest, the weight of her silence, the sting in her throat as she held back the words she wasn't ready to say. They tried to strip her identity from her in front of everyone, but they only peeled off the surface. Beneath it, she'd been someone far more dangerous someone with. Nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message. CNN wants an interview. BBC too, you've become a global case study. She didn't respond. Another message followed. 16-year-old in Chicago wrote to us. Said you changed his life. He's applying for flight school next year. Said, you didn't think kids like him could fly until he saw you. Mara smiled quietly. That message, more than the awards, the headlines, even the rank, was the one that stayed with her. That's why she'd done it. Not to prove anything to the colonel who barked at her. Not to get revenge on the rich boy with a phone, but to open a door so wide that no one could close it again. Outside the academy, she walked toward the runway where a group of new cadets was wrapping up night training. One of them, a girl, older than 19, with natural curls tucked under her cap, ran up nervously. Commander Johnson, she said breathlessly. I wanted to say thank you for everything. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. None of us would. Mara looked at her gently. What's your name? Cadet Rivera. Ma'am. You fly well today, Cadet Rivera? The girl nodded proudly. Fastest lap of the week. Good, Mara said. Now go make it faster tomorrow. As the cadet ran off, Mara stood still, watching the stars begin to appear overhead. The sky was hers, now not just to fly in, but to pass on. Back in her office, she opened a drawer and pulled out the last item she hadn't displayed. It was the unmarked silver medal, the one she had held onto a moment longer before placing it on the floor the day they humiliated her. She had never put it back on. She had never needed to. Her legacy now wasn't a medal. It was a movement. 2 years later, when Sinclair reapplied for basic enlistment after failing in every job he tried, after his social media career crumbled into scandal and silence, he walked into a local recruiting station with nothing left to lose. The recruiter, an older, black veteran with gentle eyes, skimmed his file for 2 seconds before sliding it back. Sorry, we remember you. Sinclair stared at him, but I changed. The recruiter stood up slowly. Character isn't proven when the world's watching. It's who you are when no one's clapping. You mock someone who earned what you never will. That stays with you. Sinclair walked out without a word. He was never heard from again. And Colonel Whitman? He lived quietly now, a man no longer invited to parties or veteran events. When people asked about his military career, he would pause before changing the subject. The shame clung to him heavier than his old medals ever had. Back at Langley, Mara's program had grown into something global. 23 countries adopted her training model. Her manual, Leadership Beyond Bias, became required reading at every military academy in the U.S. She was invited to lead the first diverse crew on a space mission. A mission that would symbolize everything her career had stood for: boldness, truth, and transformation. But it was a letter from a 16-year-old boy in Chicago that reminded her why she started all this in the first place. Dear Commander Johnson, I saw your video. I saw what they did to you, and I saw what you did after. Everyone at my school said someone like me could never be a pilot. But after seeing you, I'm going to try anyway. Even if they laugh at me. Even if no one believes me. Because now I believe in myself. Mara folded the letter and placed it on her desk. She walked to the observation window, where another group of cadets was lining up. She had nothing left to prove, and everything left to build. Because, true, victory isn't watching your enemies fall. It's building a future so powerful they no longer matter. They mocked her for wearing the uniform, but she answered with a legacy the whole world now wears with pride.